Hey everyone, Ryan from Ebike Escape, and in this video we're going to be putting together a Ride1Up 700 series, and I'm actually going to do that with a true mechanic. I have Matt here from All About Bikes. You'll get to meet him more in a little bit, but before I get into the video, if you are looking to purchase a Ride1Up electric bike, please consider using the link in the description as it helps us make videos like this one. Really appreciate your support. I will also put links to our electric bike accessories list, our top e-bike brands page, and our electric bike discounts code page, where I track all the deals in the brands that I follow. And as I film this, Black Friday is only a month away or so, and I am tracking all the Black Friday deals, so I will also link that post in the description. So if you're looking to get a good deal on an electric bike, now might be a good time to buy. And one of the reasons that I am doing this video is I put a poll out there a couple weeks ago asking if folks would be interested if we had an actual mechanic put together an electric bike, and to get some of their thoughts on putting together a direct-to-consumer electric bike. So with that, let's unbox this Ride1Up 700 series and check it out.
A lot of these e-bikes, it takes just as long to unbox them as it does to build them.
Yeah. One of the reasons that I wanted to get Matt's help on putting this electric bike together is Ride1Up is a little bit unique in the respect that they do not ship their electric bikes with the forks installed, so they take a little bit more expertise, I would say. And while I have put one together before, it's nice to have some additional assistance and professional really looking out to make sure it's done properly. I always recommend, if you aren't comfortable setting up your own electric bike, definitely check out a local shop, and hopefully you can find a shop in your area that will help you put one together. It's not necessarily a given. Matt here, so he runs All About Bikes here in Wausau, Wisconsin, and you're pretty comfortable putting together electric bikes.
Yeah, I mean, most e-bikes are going to be very similar to regular bikes, and you know, I think a lot of shops are hesitant to work on them for the liability. There's a lot of companies that are doing electronics, and so it's hard to find an industry standard. But when it comes to, you know, things like the fork steer tube, like the headset, those are going to be pretty well standard from an e-bike to a regular bike. So, you know, if you are talking to a shop that is hesitant to put it together, you might want to go ahead and just let them know, hey, I don't expect anything on the electronics, and they might be a little bit more willing to work with you on that. So just food for thought on that one.
Matt, how many electric bikes would you say you've assembled so far?
That's a good question. Probably somewhere around that 30 to 50. I worked at Trek Store as a service manager, worked with the Bosch systems there and others. But being that I'm running my own business, I feel a little bit more comfortable working with them now. And you know, there are some where I'm like, I don't know anything about the electronics on that, and but I can do the bicycle part, right? Yeah, so I mean, 15 years, I guess, off and on a little bit. I had what we'd say real jobs before, you know. I get a lot of flack for just being a bike mechanic, but man, I do love this as a career. But yeah, it's been a good thing.
Needless to say, he has a lot of experience putting together bikes, which is why I was very confident to have him help us out. And of course, we'll have our full review coming up on this 700 series. So I've actually reviewed almost all of the models now. So I've reviewed the Ride1Up Roadster V2, that's their single-speed belt drive. My mom is currently riding the Ride1Up Core 5 step-through. She really likes that. My brother and his wife are currently riding the Ride1Up 500 series, and I'm going up in price here. And then the Ride1Up 700 series is kind of the next step. And one of the main things you get with this bike compared to the other models is you get a nicely integrated battery. You also get the hydraulic disc brakes. So those are two main things with this bike. And of course, I'll comment when I do my full review on what sets this bike apart, not only from the other Ride1Up models, but other electric bikes as well. And so I think one of the reasons that Ride1Up goes or doesn't include the fork is because they can actually put it in a smaller box. And I think that probably saves a little bit on shipping, and that's kind of why Ride1Up sells what I view as some of the best value priced electric bikes out there. I've been reviewing them for now over a year and have been in touch with the company numerous times. So. And as you can see at this point, this is the step-through version of the 700 series. This is the one that I decided to go with because it is so accessible. I really like the step-through bikes. Definitely allows anyone to hop on them, and we did go with the gray as opposed to the blue. Yeah, so the seat that comes on the Ride1Up 700 series, Sella Royale. It's a brand that I've seen a bunch, especially on the Ride1Up bikes. It seems like they put the saddle on almost all of their electric bikes that I've personally reviewed. Oh, there we go.
A beanie to go with it. That's all right.
I don't know if this is included in all of the Ride1Up bikes, but got a Ride1Up hat. Maybe I should put that on.
There you go.
All right, so we just about have all the packaging off, and then we can finally get started on the actual assembly here. So you can see the head tube, obviously packaged. Looks like they have shrink wrap around it. And Ride1Up started putting these badges on the front, which actually look pretty cool. The cool thing about some of the Ride1Up electric bikes is since they have been around for now a number of years, they make improvements over time, not only based off of customer feedback, but also just trying to make the bike better. They actually have a post on their website where they track all of the changes that they've made on each generation, so you can kind of get a sense of some of the improvements that they made, which is pretty cool.
You know, being that I used to work at a bike shop, I used to be pretty brand loyal, and you know, kind of drank the Kool-Aid, we'll say, on some of the brands that I was working on. And now that I just do a service-only shop, I do really like some of these, you know, direct-to-consumer bikes, and they're nice quality. And so it's kind of nice to see how some of them are packaged, and you know, they're giving you a little Allen set with this as well. But the quality is there on some of these. And before I might have kind of argued that, but now that I'm putting together more of these, I'm seeing that, you know, they are pretty nice.
So I'm sure Matt's going to use his own tools when assembling this bike, because he obviously has much higher quality tools than anything that will come with any electric bike. But here's a close-up of the Allen set that Ride1Up gives. I actually think I might use this. It seems a little higher quality than some of the other Allen sets, and of course they give you every size here. So that's nice.
I kind of like to get everything out on my bench and spread out before I start in on my project. You know, starting with a pretty clean bench always helps. Now, I do got to ask, Ryan, on these Ride1Ups, do they recommend charging the battery before you start on these? Do you know?
Typically, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. They'll come with a pre-charge, though. I always charge them up typically before I go out for my first ride, but it doesn't really matter. They're all typically high-quality lithium cells that are made to really, I mean, you could charge your electric bike up after every ride if you wanted to. You're not going to be doing any damage. The one thing I will note, though, is you definitely want to make sure that you unplug your electric bike after it is fully charged. You don't want to leave it plugged in for a long amount of time, because that can damage. A lot of the, from my understanding, a lot of the chargers will actually turn it off or stop charging, but in case that mechanism fails, you don't want to overcharge the battery and cause any damage. So I always make sure I set alarms. Of course, there's people that have timers and all sorts of things that you can purchase. But so maybe let's take a closer look at all of the components. We got the rear rack there. That comes with the 700 series. Another difference compared to the 500 series, you get a nice rear rack that's included. Looks like they're including straps now as well. Has some pannier holders there as well, so we'll get that installed. And then you have the crank there.
That's just going to be the drive side. The non-drive side is on the bike already. So
then we talked about the Sella Royale saddle, and then we have the front suspension with a lockout. Now,
all the parts for the headset are on here. And we are going to want to make sure that those fall into place as need be, and we'll go ahead and show you that in just a little bit here.
Then we also have the Well-Go pedals. Those are standard on so many electric bikes, the metal type, and there's nothing wrong with them, but of course if you want to get something a little bit more unique, you could get some colored pedals. You can get pedals with more grip. And then Ride1Up also includes a bunch of hardware. And we have the front fender as well right there. The rear fender actually comes installed on the bike already.
All right, and I am always a little hesitant to let these hang as far as that goes, so I'll have you hold those. And most of them are going to be all right as far as that goes, but you really don't want to put any kinks in any sort of wires. And these are best to have a second set of hands when assembling, at least for those little moments. I'm going to get this fork going right away. And we're taking off our headset cap here. You will want a little bit of grease to assemble this as well. Set that aside for now. We're going to take off these here. Ooh, that's tight. Holy moly, that's really tight. Alright, so that's going to be the headset cap. So, we're going to want to go ahead, and I've got a nice little grease gun here to just do a little ring around. We're just going to go ahead and get messy with it. And we're going to go ahead and take off this little piece here. That's going to be what holds your retention on your bearings down. So, we're going to set that aside. We're going to go ahead and get a little bit of grease up top here as well. And this can be a little tricky without a second set of hands. It's nice that he's holding that to kind of get it out of the way. We're going to go ahead and get that up. The lower bearing is already in there. That was all saran wrapped in when we were unboxing it. And we're going to go ahead and get that plastic retaining piece. That's going to go on next.
Now, was there grease already there, or is that just something you'd recommend?
There's a little bit of grease there. Where those contact surfaces are, it's nice to have a little bit of extra. And on the lower part of the fork, there wasn't any grease on there. And we're going to go ahead, after that retention piece, that little plastic piece, we're going to go ahead and slide this on. And it does have 3 headset spacers, and you know, typically people like to be a little bit more upright. You can actually go ahead and put these on top or on the bottom, but you know, we're going to want to set it up for a little bit more upright riding ride, I would believe.
Yep.
So we can go ahead and put this on next, and then the headset cap. And this is going to keep your tension on your bearing load and keep your fork held in to where it's not going to fall out as well. So really got to hold on to that tight. Make sure that you're supporting the fork. Once you get tension on here, that's actually going to be your tension for your bearings as well. A lot of people will go ahead and tighten these first or clamp that down, but you really have to get the preload on the bearings before you do any sort of torquing on there. And it looks like it's nice. They actually do have the max Newton meter torque of 10. Now max is just that. These are going to be 5 mil bolts on here, the head on there, and most stem bolts are going to be fine around that 5 to 6 Newton meters. Because it's a max of 10, you know, I could still go up to about 8 pretty comfortably, but I don't want to actually hit that max number. That's going to be the number in which that threads start to, you know, pull after that. That's so. And I also, when assembling, I will go ahead and adjust this once I bring it out of the stand. So what I actually do while I'm assembling, so I don't forget to come back to this, I'm going to turn this at an angle in which I would never ride it at, and I'm still going to use a torque wrench to torque it down, reminding myself that I need to adjust that later. I don't ever want to walk away from an important headset bolt without that being tightened. And this is a 5.1 Newton meter torque wrench here, which again should be absolutely fine for bolts that size. But being that it does have a higher torque, I will take it up to about 8 with my torque wrench once I'm finishing it off. Looks like we've got the front brake mount. And we do have the hydraulic hose holder right here. I'll get my wrench for that. Alright. So we're going to go ahead and loosen the screw on your brake cable holder here. And I like to run these usually on the inside of the fork, just in case you'd hit something on the outside. It's better to have it run on the inside. But you know, the rule of thumb for bike shops has always been hybrids you can do on the outside and mountain bikes you want on the inside. Well, let's just protect it on whatever model we're doing, right? And I don't think we'll have tire issues, tire clearance issues with the brake cable running that way. So I've got that just loosely put on there for now. We're going to go ahead and get our front brake mount on. Looks like we've got a little bit of a short brake cable. I'm going to want to rotate the bars a little bit, which that isn't the angle that we're looking for on the bars anyways.
Yeah.
One of my favorite tools for assembling is going to be a tri-Allen too. You can pick these up at your local bike shop. I think they're around, $15 or something like that, but loosen these and get these in a better riding position. And that'll give us more space for that brake cable. These are hard to do in the stand too. It's hard to approximate about where you're going to end up and be level. So some of that stuff I do once it's out of the stand. Again, I'm going to go ahead and hit it with my torque wrench because that's important stuff. Don't want to be picking up your teeth off the pavement because you didn't tighten the bolt correctly. So there we are. And let's see here. Now we ought to be able to get in there, get our brake tightened down.
Now will you go completely tight with that, or do you leave it loose until you get the front wheel installed?
Yeah, I go ahead and leave it loose. You want it just snug enough. I get it snugged where it's completely tight and then just back it off about a quarter turn on there. And reason for that is when you put your front wheel in, you really do want to make sure that your rotor has the wiggle room to where it's not going to get bent by a brake caliper that's completely tightened down. So I've got a little bit of wiggle room. I'll tighten that down just a little bit more too, to where I have to push it a little bit. So it can be moved where it's at. And then I'm going to come back and fully tighten this little guy here too. And you don't want it to be too tight on a brake cable on a hydraulic line. I don't think it would pinch it all that much anyways, but it's a little screw, so we want to be gentle with these things. Alright, so I think the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is the front fender. And I'm just checking everything out because there are no industry standards. There are things that's going to be a 5mm head on there. I don't want to do a washer on there.
So while we are installing the fenders, it's worth pointing out, obviously, another thing that's unique about the 700 series, not only do you get that rear rack, fenders included, and they are metal fenders. So if you're looking at the other models, they might not necessarily come with them.
Oh, that's nice. Metal fenders are going to be a little bit more classic. This I'm just going to get loosely started here as well. Lots of Loctite on this one. Yeah. I can feel the bolt going in a little bit hard. Just make sure you start your threads right, and you ought to be alright. The other thing too is I guess I don't know how deep that goes, but they did send the right bolt for it. Now when I'm putting on the front fender, I usually go ahead and go up to a little bit higher mounting position back here. You can go all the way down, but then you might have tire rub. So typically when I start out, I start up in the highest position, and I can always work my way from there. I'm just going to snug that down a little bit. I can adjust the light later. Then we're going to come down here and get these mounted up. Yep, and that's what I would start with too, to give you more room. I'm going to go ahead and get a washer on here, get it through here, and then another washer on the other side, and then nut. This is a little bit different setup, and you know, I did replace a fork on something similar to this, and I do like this. It makes it a little bit easier. They've got a few different sizes here, and I just wanted to make sure I was getting the right one. Hopefully we won't need that for the rack, but I'd rather have a little bit more than a little bit less on here.
Now what I like about these kind of mounts is there's no guessing game of where they should mount, as opposed to the fenders that kind of clamp to the front fork. You know, you can go up or down with those. They're there, and that should be the correct spot to get no rubbing. Obviously, you know, raise that front fender up.
And this is going to be a 8 mil, I believe, on these. That's kind of an industry somewhat standard.
While he's finishing up the front fender, let's just take a closer look at the 700 series. You can see the nicely integrated battery. It does pop out from the bottom. I've seen some people that don't prefer that because it's just a little bit more difficult to access. I'll let you know in my full review what I think of it, of course. I really like Ride1Up's cable management here. It's some of the cleanest that I've seen. You can see they have this nice wrapping. It goes all the way to the frame, and so those cables come quite nice there. And the other thing that I really like about the step-through models, at least from what I've seen on Ride1Up's website, in order to get the more swept back bars, so that's going to put you in a much more upright riding position, you do have to go with those step-through models. Of course, you can always put on swept back handlebars if you'd prefer, but it is one benefit, in my opinion, if you're looking at the step-through. I think they think if people are looking at the step-through bike, they're probably looking for something a little bit more accessible, a little bit more comfortable, and that's where those swept back bars come in. So really like those. You can see as far as brakes here, these are Tektro hydraulic disc brakes. Very simple LCD. Of course, I'll go through all the functions of that during my full review.
Yeah, I thought I'd just mention, I did say 8 mil. That is for the nut size on here, and then the other size here is going to be a 4 millimeter. And that is a lock nut as well. So, you know, just nice and snug on there. I'm going to go ahead and prep for installing the front wheel. So you do need to take out your front brake pad spacer, and that is so you don't compress your brake cylinders. You want to make sure that you're not pressing your brake lever while you have this spacer out.
Now, if someone accidentally were to hit the front brake now, what do they use to kind of separate those pads in order to get it back to where you could install the front wheel?
Yeah, so there is a tool specifically for it. This is going to be the PP 2.1 from Park, and you would just stick that in there and wedge it, and you kind of want to rock it back and forth. You do want to be careful not to damage the brake pads when you're doing that, and that's why this is a little bit wider surface. Now you can use a flat-headed screwdriver. Just make sure you're getting the screwdriver in there deep enough to where you're not gouging into that brake pad surface, because you know the brake rotor and the pads, they do wear in together, and it's what they call a bedding process. And so, you know, if you do have little imperfections in the brake pad, it's going to kind of create uneven wear between the two. And we can talk a little bit more about bedding in brake pads once it's fully assembled too, because that's a really important thing to make sure that your braking system is operating well after you build it. So I will leave my tire uninflated while I'm putting it in. It might make it a little bit easier. Taking off the quick release nut in the spring. These often get put in backwards, and it can make it a lot harder to install the front wheel. Typically, you keep the cam on the non-drive side, but I have kind of switched that around, and I keep it away from the rotor at all costs. Rotors can be kind of sharp. You don't want to touch them, and the skins from, or the oil from your skin can actually kind of contaminate the rotor. It's not best to do it. I mean, you know, with my hands being a little bit greasy from some of the stuff I've been working with, I certainly don't want to be touching that rotor. It is sharp too, so we want to keep away from it. We're human, so we go ahead and look at shiny things and want to touch it, but probably not best. So that's why I keep the cam on the other side. Now when installing it, we just got to make sure we're aligning that brake rotor in there. And then what I do, and this is one that, you know, if you're not working out of a stand, you can certainly go ahead and put your weight down on the bike and come over it from the top to get it centered. Now you can go ahead and not center your wheel properly in the dropouts, and a lot of people don't realize that. But when we go to align our caliper later, if your wheel isn't aligned in there proper, then you've got you'd have to realign your caliper and your wheel. So I go ahead and push up on it when it's in the stand, give it the old knee, and then I want to go ahead and engage that cam. So a lot of people will just go ahead and spin these quick releases on until it's tight too. So you gotta, I can loosen it a little bit, and that's pretty loose, right? So then we want to tighten it up a little bit more. I know this is a simple thing, but you know, we still mess up on simple things. So kind of the rule of thumb for this is it needs to be a little bit difficult. What we always said at the bike shops was that, you know, you want it enough tension to where it puts a little red imprint, little red and white imprint on your hand, to where it's going to be a little bit tricky to do. So I can see here that we're going to need to adjust our fender now that we've got that in. It's a good thing that I did leave the tire uninflated, because I wouldn't have had enough clearance to get it in there. So we'll go ahead and get back to our nope, we need to go to a different size to adjust that. Another tri-Allen here with a smaller size group. This is going to be a 3, a 2, and a 2.5. That's going to be the 3. I'm going to loosen that on each side just a little bit, and then we can see how much we need to come out with that fender. And let's see here, we'll tighten that down. Got enough distance. Still kind of guesstimating at this point, because I will want to inflate the tires and see where we're at. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is tighten down that brake caliper and align it. So a really good trick for this, I got an old beat up white signboard that I use here. It's got a lot of use already. Could use an old white rag or something that is light in color, because this is actually the best way to align your brake caliper. A lot of people will go ahead and say online to just go ahead and give it a few squeezes, and you know, with this kind of loose on here, it'll kind of auto center itself. I have not really found that to be the case. There is one tool that works maybe about 50% of the time. Let me see if I can find it. There is a brake spacer. Yeah. This is a cool little tool here. And we can give it a whirl. And I would recommend, these do typically work with Tektro brakes actually. So it's a little spacer that goes on your rotor. So we'd want to slide it on this way. And again, we don't want to touch the rotor, but we're getting that on there. That's metal on metal, and we want to kind of slide it up and in, and it gets right into your brake caliper. And then you can go ahead and squeeze your brake lever up top. Pump it a couple of times, squeeze it, and then we're going to go ahead and tighten down. That might center our rotor for us, but if not, that's why we put the white mat down to see the visual of it. And these can be pretty tricky. And we're going to go ahead and pull that out. That needs to be removed. And once we give the wheel a spin, we'll be able to hear if we've got brake rub. I can hear the tire, but I don't hear any brake rub, which is cool. We'll pump the brake a few times. It may still... It's got a little bit of a rub. But that'll give us a better baseline. If you come around, you can see with the white background, got just a little bit of rotor rub. And the rotor has got a slight wobble to it. I think I can go ahead and either true the rotor, which is just basically controlled bends on the rotor, or I can go ahead and loosen this top brake bolt from what I see there and probably get it centered that way. And I'm just loosening that top bolt for now. Seeing if it's centered up, and I'm going to just snug it down. And we'll come back with a torque wrench on that too. This will be the part of the video where you guys get really frustrated because I made it look easy. But it's probably because I've only done a couple thousand of these at this point. And it can be very tricky, and that's why I do recommend that white background, is you really kind of need to eyeball it as best as possible. Some rotors come a little bit bent out of the box. That's not uncommon, and they do expect you, most companies do expect you to be able to true that. They do make a specific tool for that as well. So this would be basically your rotor bending tool, the DT-2 from Park Tool. And that's something that I would really like to see professionals do. But, you know, if it's something that you've had experience with in the past, it's going to slide on here, and you could bend part of the rotor here, or you could bend it here. And you can flip the tool around depending on which way you need to bend it. And you can go here with it as well. But that's really something that I would like to see most people leave up to their professional bike shops.
One thing I think that's worth pointing out at this point is these electric bikes are made to come to your house. If you think about how a bike shop is going to receive a bike, it's not like they put it together and it's just good to go. So you should expect the same thing when you're getting a direct-to-consumer bike. There's perhaps going to be minor adjustments needed to the brakes. There's perhaps going to be some derailleur adjustments that you have to do. It doesn't mean that the manufacturer messed up in any way. It's just that's how bikes are shipped. They can't possibly have them perfectly tuned where out of the box you put the front tire on, you get the chain attached, and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ryan. And, you know, a lot of people don't realize that, you know, even the bikes at, you know, bike shops, most of those take a professional mechanic anywhere from, you know, a half an hour all the way up to 2 hours for some of the more intense builds. So, you know, these things are out of the box. They're pretty normal for someone like me, and they're going to be a little bit trickier for your normal person. And hopefully this video will help everyone out to where it's not as complicated, and if you do need to take it into a local bike shop, at least you've got a good starting point with it.
Matt's just taking off some tape. I believe that was for packaging, but while he's doing that, let's just take a look at these tires. So I also really like these tires that Ride1Up is including on the 700 series. I believe these are the same tires they at least used to include on the Ride1Up Limited, which I failed to mention earlier, but these are the Schwalbe Super Moto-X. Definitely set up for commuting. Not a whole lot of tread there, but they are a little bit wider, and I was really a big fan of them when we owned our limited, and I'm really happy to see these same tires, especially at this price point. There's a close-up of the brakes here. These are 180 millimeter discs. So usually you'll see 160, 180 on many of the affordable electric bikes. So a little bit more stopping power here, which is nice.
All right, I'm getting my torque wrench calibrated here for the crank bolt. And I'd have to check my spec, but I believe 40 is pretty standard for most crank bolts. I'll go ahead and start it with my normal 8 millimeter. And gotta make sure you're flipping these to where they're at the right spot. I have seen people put them on this way. So we want to put that on. That is a square taper, so it'll kind of hold itself on a little bit until you get your rear bolt started.
And this is a good time to also mention that this is something that's unique to Ride1Up as well, is you actually have to install the drive side crank. Most electric bikes are going to come with that pre-installed. So again, why it's really great to have Matt here to have his expertise to install this for us.
I'll get our 8 mil on here and we'll torque that. I've got it to 40 Newton meters. I believe it's 38 to 42 Newton meters is pretty typical for these cranks. There are some other ones across the industry that are going to be a little bit more. Some of the SRAM cranks are going to be 50. So that's pretty tight. You know, before I've got two hands and, you know, cranking down on it pretty good. If you don't have a torque wrench for that, really stinking tight for crank bolt is the recommended.
And I've noticed too, this is new, at least I haven't seen it on the other Ride1Up brands, not sure if they put this on new, but chainstay protector, and it's actually branded. Again, really like some of those nice touches that Ride1Up is taking. I just feel like it's such a great value-priced brand that really cares about selling a quality electric bike at still a really good price.
Moving my derailleur forward here, this is the rear derailleur, so I can get my chain on easily. We could have went ahead and kind of did it all in one foul swoop when we installed the crank. We could have put the chain behind here. I just know from experience you can push in on the rear derailleur there, and with a single up front you can just flip it right on up like we just did.
And in the rear on the 700 series we have Shimano Acera. Again, entry-level component. What do you think about? Have you seen Acera on many bikes? A lot of experience with this particular component.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much a go-to for a rear derailleur. You know, they're very functional and kind of a workhorse for Shimano. You know, it shifts good. It's not the highest end, but it's not the lowest, and I certainly don't have any problems as a professional tuning these up. Acera is pretty workable and pretty nice stuff all in all. So yeah, not too bad. Now one thing that I'm taking a look back here is I'm gonna go ahead and hold this up just to be able to pedal it around. Looks like it does have it in a gear already. Well, we've got a few different things, but one thing I'm noticing right here is this did come with a bent derailleur hanger. So if you get right behind, you can see that this little aluminum piece is actually bent in a little bit. And again, that is something that can kind of happen with box bikes. And at this point, you know, if I was a regular person without a shop, I would have to take this into a bike shop and let them use the derailleur derailleur hanger alignment gauge on it. Now I have that here, so I think that's going to be somewhat of an easy bend back, but these are usually CNC aluminum derailleur hangers, so they can break when you're bending them back. So that's something that we'll have to take a look at in a little bit here. Right now I need to get the rear fender up and off of this tire, and it looks like it's going to actually mount to the rear rack as well, is what it's looking like. So we'll see how that ends up going. I believe that's what we're going to be shooting for the rear fender. It's a little bit different than what I've seen in the past. So.
All right, so we got the rear rack here installed, just a few mounting points here. The rear rack actually mounts to the rear of the fender here, got that bolt in there, and then two shorter bolts here. Feels solid, got that fender nice and snug.
Yeah, I do want to mention a really nice tool to get in here was a T-handle. That's going to be a little bit tricky to get in there to get that one otherwise, but the T-handle was enough to snug it down. Also, another thing is that, you know, these kind of come in at an angle a little bit, so make sure you're starting your threads right. I mean, common sense on that stuff always works out. And then the other one too is just that there are a second set of bolt holes where you could possibly go on there. Seems to me that the higher bolt or the higher point is the right mounting spot for this rack.
Matt and I were just talking about tire pressure. Maybe you want to give some of your thoughts what we put these Schwalbe Super Moto-X tires at.
Yeah, so we ended up going at a 30 psi, a little bit nicer ride quality. You know, a lot of people don't realize that you get a lot nicer ride quality, you know, with the lower PSI. In some cases, some manufacturers have even, you know, steered away from suspension entirely to go with, you know, just a wider tire with a wider range of PSI. It's just like your car tires, you know, if you went ahead and pumped them up to the 42 max that they have, your teeth would be rattling out, you know, going down the road. So same thing with your bike tires. You don't really want to go up to the max PSI unless you're going for ultimate speed. But even then, you're going to have so much, you know, bounce back from the road that the lower PSIs are going to be nicer riding quality and sometimes actually even faster. They've kind of proved that on road bikes nowadays too. So, yeah. So keep that in mind when doing tire pressure. Somewhere in the mid-range is a safe bet because I'm not going to assume anyone's rider weight. You know, we've got anyone riding bikes that's, you know, 80 pounds all the way up to, you know, 400 or 500 pound people. So it really does depend on that. But, you know, keeping it reasonable for your tire pressure is a good idea. I like the lower. I'm just going to grease up the pedals here. We do have a left and a right, which makes it easy. And when putting on pedals, you always want to spin on pedals the direction that you would be biking. So this is going to be righty-tighty, but the other side is actually going to be reverse threads. So, and with a bike stand, I can go ahead and actually hold on to it. Just crank it right on. Grab my pedal wrench. And I can use that still nice and snug. Get that started. Do the same thing. Yeah, so this is the side that has the reverse thread. Thank you. There we go. Pedals are on. Yeah, you want to go pretty firm on there. That's one that I don't know the Newton meter torque right off the top of my head. But I want to say it's right around 35, but don't quote me on that. So you do want them pretty snug on there, and just make sure, you know, you got a good bite on it. The nice thing is with the way that they thread on, they are actually supposed to tighten up as you're pedaling. So the next thing that we need to do is get it down in the lowest gear back here to figure out our derailleur hanger problem that we found earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and shift it down, and we'll go ahead and stop that. And what we're going to have to do is actually remove the derailleur itself to get to the hanger and align it. These can be a little tricky too when taking off the derailleur. I'm going to break that loose, and I'm kind of holding up to where when it does come loose, it's not going to wreck the threads on the derailleur hanger. That's loose, and we're going to get that kind of just out of our way over here. Now the tool we're going to use here, let's see here. Got the old DAG 2.2 from Park Tool, and I'm going to go ahead and thread that in right where the derailleur was. And how this tool works is this loosens up, and you want to check it at your valve stem here. And I can go ahead and tighten this piece down, and then you can come up here with it, and you can see how far away that is. That is one heck of a gap. And that should, well, it really ought to be with proper spacing, be the same on either side. So when we wheel it back around, it needs to be touching on both sides of the rim. So it's telling me what I already know, is that the derailleur hanger is bent. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is kind of choke up on this a little bit, and I'm going to actually physically bend this back. And this is where things can go wrong. It can break at this point. We tweak it out a little bit. We're going to eyeball it initially, and then this gauge is going to tell us the rest. So I'm going to move this, get that set pretty close to the edge of the rim, and we're going to go ahead and spin it as we go up. Our gap is looking better, but still not optimal. I'm going to go ahead and spin that around, and let's see, we need to actually split that difference. So if it's actually here, it might went a little bit too far with the bending initially. Right? Let me think. No, we need to go out the other way yet. There we go. So we're nice and close there, within a few mils, and then spin it around, and right there. You can get a little twist too. Let's see, it's not quite touching there. It's tricky because usually up and down works out, but if you do have a bad enough twist, you might not be able to get it to shift as well. I think I'm going to go ahead and just take it and tweak it a little bit that way. Tweaking it. Boy, that's bad. Hopefully they put nice malleable derailleur hangers on here. There we go. That's going to be better too. It's a little bit further off here, but we're getting 3 points where it's pretty darn close. Alright, got that back on. Looks like we need to get this out of the way here.
So we have both integrated front and rear lights on the 700 series here. There's that front light. Looks like a Busho brand. Actually looks pretty bright. And there's that rear light as well. The rear light is not actuated by the brake levers, which you do see on some electric bikes. So it is nice that the light is integrated.
Hesitant right off the way. And then I can go ahead and do a little bit of a barrel adjust to get it to go up to that next gear. Ooh. We got something else going on here. Yeah, a little bit of chain rub. So, if they set up the limit screws right, I can kind of push back here. I'm pushing this way with this finger and in with my thumb on the pivot point. They set up the derailleur set screws good. I ought not be able to push this over. And they did, so that's good. I can't push that over physically, and that's not something that I'm going to crank on anyways. And vice versa for the limit screw when I'm coming down. I can go ahead and kind of push here in and then pull back with these two fingers and see if it'll kind of come off, if it'll want to jump off of that last cog. And it does not want to, so that's good. The limit screws were set pretty good out of the box. And then the next is just kind of seeing where the cable tension is, to which I already did do that barrel adjust. And it's shifting through pretty good. Some of it can be a little bit how your thumb is hitting it up top. Yeah, that's not too bad. Alright, so we've got a little bit of chain rub up front. It's tricky because where it needs it is like right in the middle of them.
Yeah.
That just don't look right, does it? Good thing I torqued it to spec, and I've got my mark here to remember to adjust all of that. So it looks goofy, but hey, if it saves someone's life, it's worth it. Gonna go ahead and get the saddle on next. I believe that's gonna be a 6mm Allen key underneath here. Yes, indeed. Turn that sideways. And then turn it back. And this is going to be kind of a preference where you want it. Some people go with the nose down saddle. I just try to level it out as best as possible. I think that's going to be pretty good right there. And tighten that down. It is a pretty big bolt. Doesn't look like they have a Newton meter spec on there. So we'll just tighten it as best as possible. Most of the time on bolts this big you can go up to about 10 or 12 at least comfortably. Just nice and snug for now. Now I'm going to come back to my controls here in the headset. I'll take my tri-Allen here and loosen this up. Then I can go ahead and spin this around. And I'll align that with the front tire and wheel as best as possible. I want to check here and make sure we've got enough compression on it. That's usually max of about 4 Newton meter for your tension going down on your bearings. So that can be kind of a feel thing as well. It'll bind your bearings a little bit if it's too tight, and if it's too loose you'll have a wobble in it. So I'll go ahead and grab my torque wrench. This is the one that had 10 Newton meters, and we'll get it up to about 8 here. There's where it goes. Come back up here. And 8 Newton meters. Good to go on that. These ones are 6 Newton meters. That's interesting. You know, same size bolt head. 6 Newton meter here, all the way up to 10 here. Now when doing these too, you want to make sure you have the same amount of spacing on either side of these. A lot of people will just go ahead and crank down wherever they're going with it. And looking for about that same width on either side. I think, you know, I torqued this down to 5 before, so not much of a jump, not much of a tightening to go up to the 6 that I've got it at. And this is another one you're just going to want to kind of eyeball your bar levelness as far as that goes. That can be kind of a user preference thing. But I think that's going to be pretty good. I'll go ahead and hop up on the saddle to see how the positioning is. Not bad. So we got this all torqued, got this torqued. Looks like this is 18.5 Newton meters max. One would assume that that's also torqued from the factory, but being that I'm assembling it, I'm going to go ahead and torque that one as well.
And we didn't record it, but Matt also torqued down the hydraulic disc calipers.
Those are going to be 6 Newton meters on the brake bolts. Pretty standard on those, 6 to 8. 5 mil, 18 max. I'm going to go about 17. Yeah, they did torque that already from the factory, which is responsible. I think the rest of it is going to be the fun part. Test ride, making sure everything else is, I guess maybe we'll check that one. I left that a little bit loose. Yeah, that's snug. Yeah, so one thing that we wanted to talk about here at the end was bedding in your brakes. So we're going to go ahead and take this for a test spin. And from a few different manufacturers, Shimano being one of them, they say to go ahead and get up to a pretty good speed and just hit either your rear or your front, whichever one you're working on at the time. And you want to hit it, you know, nice and steady, but you don't want to come to a complete stop. And you want to get up to a pretty good speed and then repeat that process. So you want to clamp it down pretty firm, but not go all the way to a complete stop. And you want to do that for each one 10 times. So both the front and the rear. And that's kind of the bedding in process. That'll make your rotor and your brake pads happier together. And there is kind of a little bit of a glaze on those pads that needs to come off too in the bedding process. So that really helps it perform the way that it ought to on your test ride. So. Cruising.
First impressions.
It rides really nice. I love the handlebars. I think I would go through with the step through if that's what they come with. This is kind of a fun riding position to be in. Feels very stable at speed. The tires are really comfortable. I think the lower PSI that we put them at definitely helped out. I think I might need to get one of these. Mechanic approved.
All right, I hope you found this video valuable. If you're looking at a Ride1Up electric bike or just wanted to hear from a bike mechanic some of his tips on how to assemble an electric bike. Matt, anything to add there?
You know, I mean, if you feel overwhelmed, reach out to a bike shop as far as that goes. And there are some things there you just kind of want to leave to the pros. Yeah, you might be able to figure it out, but at what cost? Is it worth your sanity? The derailleur hanger was the one on this build that kind of would have been, I would say, your average person's kind of kryptonite. And that was one that we needed to use a tool on. Other than that, you know, the build quality on this, pretty impressed with. It's using Tektro brakes. Those aligned quite nicely. Have no rotor rub on it. So that's pleasing to see, and the quality is there on it. You know, it's very similar to what I'd see in any of the shops that I've worked at. I like the Schwalbe tires on here, really nice. So that's probably one of my favorite things on the bike, and these Tektro brakes are always a good thing. So pretty nice build quality. We'll see how it goes on the test ride.
And if you did like this video, please consider subscribing if you're looking at purchasing a Ride1Up electric bike. That's going to make more videos like this one possible. If you did like having Matt set up an electric bike, let me know in the comments below and we'll see if we can do it again. Again, Matt is here in Wausau. He runs an awesome bike shop out of his garage called All About Bikes. So thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.